Hi guys, SollyDubbed here, and today I'm doing a video review on the SpeedLink Tarius RGB gaming mouse. Now this mouse can be found on SpeedLink's website for €60. However, if you go on Amazon.co.uk, it can be found for around £40. So I'll be basing it on the £40 to £45 price tag just because it's relatively near Black Friday and Christmas, and so the review will be based on around £45. Now, for that price, you can find a variety of different mice. Make sure you check out the link in the description below for alternatives, and also buy links to the SpeedLink. So let's get into the review. First of all, in terms of the mouse itself, as you can see, it's got RGB light. It's a wired gaming mouse. It's got adjustable weights which can be accessed underneath, and the weights themselves are 3.3 grams each, which pretty much equates to around 10 grams of additional weight. Now you can see I've got them all out. Now, in terms of the overall weight of the mouse, it's around 104 to 106 grams when I put it on my scale. The reason I say around that region is because SpeedLink have quoted the weight, including the cable, which is 145 grams, and that is way more than you'd expect in comparison to some watches like the Roccat Kane 120 Kane AMO, which is around 95 or just under 90 grams. So in reality, the mouse itself weighs around 106 grams, and with the weight it goes to around 116 grams, give or take. So just worth bearing that in mind. Don't let that 145 grams kind of put you off. Now, the mouse itself doesn't have any sort of dedicated profile switch button. However, there are tons of buttons. There's 12 programmable, fully programmable buttons on the mouse. You can see 4 on the left over here, 2 on the side. This little part over here is actually made for claw grippers, which you don't actually really see, and I actually quite like it. I like the fact that I've integrated that. It means that it's a little bit more comfortable if you're a claw gripper. Then you've got a button over here on the left hand side. These 2 buttons, which are currently default as DPI buttons, and then a left and right, and including the mouse wheel button as well. Now, in terms of rattle noise, there is none whatsoever. As you might be able to hear, that's just the cable wobbling away. I will, however, note that the cable itself does introduce a little bit of drag, very, very small amount, and the only reason I know that is because I was comparing it to, for example, the Roccat one, which just seems a little bit smoother when using it. Now, the cable itself is 1.8 meters long, and it's connected via USB Type A, normal USB into the back of your PC. Now, the RGB lights can be fully customized through the SpeedLink software. However, they're not independent zones. They're all linked all together, which is something that I feel like it's kind of a shame. Whereas some of its competitors, such as Logitech, have got independent zones, which then can be customized to your liking. So, for example, the scroll wheel and then the logo. Over here, it's also got lights which stem around underneath, which kind of remind me of a few other mice out there, specifically a HyperX mouse. Now, in terms of the inside, what's the optical sensor that's found inside? It's a PixArt sensor. It's the PixArt 3360 sensor. That goes up to 12,000 dpi. However, via interpolation, it goes up to a ridiculous 24,000 dpi. Now, you do notice a bit of jittering at the highest level, and no, you can't go between 12 and 24,000. It's either 12 or 24,000. You don't have, let's say, 20,000 dpi to play around with. But let's be honest, who's going to actually use it at that DPI? I actually used it majority of the time when I was doing a review, or testing it, should I say, for the review, at around 1,500 to 2,000 DPI, and that's with my mouse sensitivity pretty much completely down on Counter-Strike and in Windows. Now, moving on from that, it's got a 1000 Hertz polling rate, which is great, and therefore has no problems in terms of picking it up. I didn't notice any sort of issues in terms of acceleration or deceleration, as you might expect with that PixArt sensor. It's a pretty good sensor, to say the least. And also in terms of lift-off distance, I would say it's just under 1 CD. It's very, very low in that respect, and there's no way of adjusting that through the software, which I'll show you in a bit. Now, I'm going to go quiet so you guys can actually listen to the mouse quickly in terms of the mouse clicks. So that's the little clicking ASMR section out of the way. What I do notice, however, and hopefully my camera picked it up, but there's kind of like a a sticky finger type of sound. So essentially when you've got a little bit of sweat at the end of your fingers, I know that might sound gross, but nevertheless you hear kind of like a spring back type of sound with these buttons specifically, the ones at the bottom. But other than that, you don't really have that issue with the left and right click button, and there's no issue in terms of pressing them in any sort of way, and there's no sort of issue when you're pressing left and right at the same time. Some mice have that given the spacing that they have with the left and right button. Anyway, going on from that, I will say that what I don't like about the mouse design, specifically with the buttons, is the two buttons on the left hand side. They've kind of got a rib type of design, and they do stick out quite a bit, as you might be able to see, and they just don't feel comfortable. So by that I mean, when I was playing Counter-Strike and I just wanted to reload, each time I was swiping my finger up or down, it just felt like I was, I don't know, edging around something that's relatively sharp, and I just didn't like that feel. It just feels kind of clunky, and it just feels like it could have been refined and smoothened out. If you compare it to, for example, the Roccat mouse over here, or you compare it to other mice out there such as the Logitech G403, then those mice have much softer buttons and they're just much better designed. So I wasn't a fan of that with the SpeedLink mouse. Now, moving on from that, let's also talk about the scroll wheel. As you might be able to see over here, it's got a single clicky type of feel. Hopefully you might be able to see that, but yeah, single clicky feel. And I have no complaints whatsoever, but it does feel relatively cheap in terms of a scroll wheel. It doesn't feel like a premium scroll wheel. And I mean, I know it's a £40 mouse, but again, when you compare it to some of its competitors, it makes you think that SpeedLink have, not to say cut corners, but it doesn't feel as good as its competitors. And the same could go with its weights. They really are just like a little I don't know, little plasticky bit over here, or rubbery bit with some normal weights, and it's not even indicated in terms of the weight. And the compartment underneath over here just feels very flimsy and cheap, which, you know, over time might actually break in terms of its clasp. So yeah, in terms of the actual build quality of it, I'm not too impressed, and in terms of what SpeedLink have done in terms of the design of it, again, not very impressed. However, in terms of ergonomics, I think this mouse is extremely comfortable. I would say it's somewhat like the DeathAdder Elite, or the DeathAdder range from Razer. It does feel very ergonomic. It is very much made for a right-handed mouse, right-handed user. Sorry, it's a right-handed mouse. But the mouse itself really fits like a glove. And as I mentioned before, due to that little not say button, but a little area there, it can also be used in a variety of different ways, by claw grip, fingertip grip, or palm grip as well. In terms of my hand size, it's around 18 centimeters from top to bottom, and around 8 or so centimeters from the left and right, around that range. And you can see it fits really well in my hand, and I have no complaints whatsoever. It's relatively flat. If I compare it to such as the Roccat over here, you can see it's got less of an arch, so it's a little bit more flat type mouse, but then it's also a little bit wider, to say the least. So, you know, in terms of ergonomics, I think SpeedLink have done a fantastic job in comparison to some of its competitors. I'd say it's one of the better ergonomic mice out there. So let me also show you the software on Windows. So the software itself is pretty primitive, to say the least. It doesn't look great, and in all honesty, I think SpeedLink could have done a bit of a better job in terms of the aesthetics of it. But you do get plenty of controls, as you might expect, with all the buttons to choose from. If you click on them, I'll just go on this one, you've got a variety of different things you can do, assign macros, key combinations as well, and even have it assigned, like I've got one of the keys as RGB on and off, and it works flawlessly. All the buttons respond very well, no issues whatsoever there. In terms of the advanced mode, you can see you've got the DPI section. Just to show you the 24,000 DPI. If you just go one click back, it goes to 12,000. If you go one click up, it goes to 24,000. You can enable or disable DPIs, and it also shows you the current selection as you go. The software itself doesn't respond automatically. You have to hit apply for it to go to the mouse, but then when it goes to the mouse, it does save it on the mouse itself. In terms of the lighting effects, you can see you've got different lighting effects. However, you've only got it throughout the whole mouse. You haven't got it, per zone, and in the macros you can assign them as well if you so wish. So overall, what do I make of the mouse? Well, to be quite honest with you, I do like what Speedlink have done. I do think that they've done a decent job in the ergonomics and the RGB lights, for example, and the sensor itself is pretty flawless from my tests. However, it just feels a little bit clunky at times and a little bit cheap in some respect. It's not the best premium quality mouse that I've come across, but that said, it is £40, so make of it as you will. I think it's a good alternative mouse to other mice out there. It's not a mouse I would jump to and say I need this mouse versus other ones out there, specifically, you know, well-known brands like Logitech, Roccat, or Razer, for example. However, it's worth considering if you want a mouse with loads of extra buttons. So there we go, guys. That's been the honest, unbiased, unpaid review. If you've enjoyed this review, make sure you give it a like, subscribe if you want to see more, favorite and share to help your family and friends also decide. Alright guys, I've been totally dubbed. Take care.